All right, so let's get started. Welcome to Expand the Boundaries of Your OpenAir System through Scripting. I'm Robert Giordano from Top Step LLC, and we'll be going through this presentation, show you a little bit about OpenAir scripting. Okay, so what are the purposes of scripting within OpenAir? What scripting allows you to do is further customize OpenAir to your business practices. From simple data validations and notifications to complex integrations and calculations. Some examples of what you can do with scripting are creating notifications when expenses reach 80% of project caps. We can create revenue transactions to allocate revenue recognized by users' time. And then also we can do complex integrations, such as integrating Salesforce and OpenAir to create projects from opportunities. So an overview of scripting. In OpenAir, scripting is available to allow data manipulations behind the scenes or to enhance the notification and approval process based on events or data triggers. The scripting engine in OpenAir uses standard JavaScript with specific libraries to execute commands. But one of the things to note is that unlike a lot of web-based scripting, it cannot be used to manipulate the OpenAir user interface. So really, scripting is used to do a lot of data manipulation and, like we said, notifications and approvals. Okay, there are two types of scripts within OpenAir. First are form scripts. OpenAir defines all of their user interfaces in particular forms, and on many of those forms, although not all of those forms, you can trigger a script when you save the script. And the triggers are when you're saving, submitting, or approving a form. So with any one of those items, then you can trigger a script. Now, this type of form script is primarily useful for kind of form validation, those sorts of things in there. You can be used for limited data manipulation, but the scripts run within the UI. So what'll happen is if you do too much data manipulation, the script won't, or the UI won't come back to the user in a timely fashion. So really you want to kind of limit your data manipulation here on the form scripts. The other type of scripts that we have within OpenAir are scheduled scripts. Now these run on a set schedule as frequently as once every 5 minutes. Now these are useful for data manipulation, adjustments, integrations. Well, a lot more of the heavier processing that you would need to be done are generally used in the scheduled scripts. Okay. One thing to note though, scheduled scripts require additional setup by NetSuite support to be used in the sandbox. Basically, you have to ask them to trigger scheduled scripts in the sandbox, and you have to remember to do this every time you refresh the sandbox. Okay, so scripting within OpenAir. In 2014, in the October release, OpenAir introduced the Scripting Center. Okay? And it's been enhanced with each release. And this acts as a container within OpenAir to ensure that any scripts executed can't damage data integrity or system performance. Provides functions to assist with quick script building, but you have to have JavaScript knowledge in order to build scripts. So while it does help you a lot, we still need to have JavaScript knowledge. So it can usually be found if you click on the administration menu item, and then the scripting center will bring you to the scripting center. And if you look at the scripting center, there's another set of menus. There's your form scripts, your scheduled scripts, libraries, parameters, and solutions. Okay, so the script development, OpenAir does have a built-in workflow for scripting. Okay, this is manually executed though, so you have to walk through each one of these steps manually. And this allows the development and development testing to occur in an OpenAir environment without affecting data altered by anyone but the developer tester. So when you walk through the process here and after you begin developing a script and get into the test function, which is the first step as shown here. What will happen is that test will only be run as the test user. So you can start developing the scripts in production environment without having any impact on any other user except for the identified test user. So walking through the development lifecycle here, we can see we start off as the inactive stage. And then from the inactive stage, we can go from test to delete to view the history of what's there. We then move into the testing. Once we move into test, we move into the testing phase of that. And that's where you can test based on the user who's running it. And again, it won't affect any other users while you're in that mode. Okay. Once you deploy the scripts, okay, now you're in the active phase. For form scripts, they will be active for anybody that enters, uses the form and saves the form. And for scheduled scripts, they will, once you activate the script, it will ask you to implement a schedule. So the script will start running on that schedule. From the active phase, again, you can undeploy the script and go back into the testing phase, or you can, again, view the history. Okay. Once you start revising a script, the old script will remain in play. Okay. As you can see, it'll state that it's active revising. And in the active revising stage, it will act as a test script to the user who is running. It'll run the latest in the revised code. But for any other users, the older code that was in there in the active stage will run. And from that, now we can see we can drop back all the way through the development process. We can deploy the changes, we can discard the changes, and then going back down the line, we can undeploy, disable testing, and eventually delete the script if we so desire. So again, within this development life cycle, this is all manually inactive. You actually physically have to select the down drop and select where you want to go next. So the scripting center looks like this. And within the scripting center, there are two sections of this, or actually three sections. You have your menu items across the top. We have a list of scripting center functions. And then over on the right, what you have here are the script commands or your editor. And what you can see also up here at the top is the log file. So if you're running through the test and you're creating testing criteria, or you're still running you're creating your script here, you can view the log file of the latest run right up here. And then again, on the left, we have our script center functions, which we will start to walk through now. Okay, so the first thing is the scripting studio. This identifies the test owner, the initial functions, which libraries are called, okay? And this is the main area within form scripts where you're running from, a save button, or before the save or after save. The next item, okay, it's the script owner. Now, one thing to note here is that the script owner must have data view and permissions to act on script impacted data. So whoever's writing the script, the filter sets and their role impact the script. So if a individual is creating or running the script, it won't act on anything that they can't already see based on their filter sets. The next item in the commands center, or the scripting center functions, are the SOAP explorers. This contains all of the tables and fields available for script use. OpenAir obviously groups their tables more or less as objects, as JavaScript objects. The SOAP Explorer will show you the object and show you all the fields as part of those objects. The Function Explorer. Function Explorer is very useful. Okay, this displays all of the OpenAir specific JavaScript functions, along with an example, which is actually quite nice. So it'll show you how the read function works. It'll show you how the modify function works. It shows a little piece of code that you can actually cut and place in your code, so that you can, easily add these add these functions to your code without having to remember or go back to the JavaScripting guide. So the Function Explorer is very useful in developing scripts. Another part of the center function are the scripting parameters. Now, parameters within JavaScript or within the OpenAir scripting allow you to set essentially variables outside of the script itself. So this is very useful for items that need to be changed by, let's say, another user, an administrator, without actually having to go into the script itself and making the changes in there and having to redeploy it. So the script parameters allow you to create those variables outside of the script and again, make those changes. So again, another very useful function that OpenAir implemented quite recently. Another item here is the custom fields, and this displays the instance-specific custom fields and associated tables. So again, another list, so you can view the custom fields here without having to go outside of this and to the custom fields section. So right again here, this allows you to, again, develop your scripts within the scripting center and not have to constantly leave and go back. OpenAir tries to make it a little easier for you to go through, to have everything at your fingertips while you're creating. And finally, there's a terminology. And again, this displays the instance-specific terminology of how you change the instance. So again, you don't need to go outside of the OpenAir in order to, the scripting center in order to develop. Okay. And then there's the form schema. So this is only for form scripts only. Okay. And this shows you what the API names are of the forms. So again, just like the Function Explorer, you can go through, you can view what the form scripts are right then and there, and you can pull them right into your code. Makes it a little easier. Okay, so OpenAir specific JavaScript libraries. Okay, these are the libraries that OpenAir implemented to allow you to interact with OpenAir through the JavaScript. The first one is the NSOA context. Okay, this is the system information such as unit usage. We'll get into this a little bit later. So it's an item where OpenAir has some governance limits, and we'll talk about this in a bit. Okay, the NSOA.form, these are commands to retrieve data from a saved or submitted form. NSOA.meta. Okay, used for logging and alerts. You'll find you'll use this one quite often in order to do some logging functions. Very useful in debugging your code. So again, we'll talk a little bit more about this. NSOA.NS connector allows a script to execute pre-configured NetSuite integration on all data, scheduled scripts, or a single record form script. So what this does is it allows you to kick off the pre-configured NSOA connector mappings and allows you to kick those off from within the script. So you can essentially kick off integrations with NetSuite through this script. The next one is the NSOA record. Allows for the creation of specific objects that match OpenAir database definition. The NSOA.record are the JavaScript objects that represent the OpenAir libraries. And again, through these records, you have access to all the different fields within that object. NSOA.report. Now, this is used to access the metadata associated with reports published within the OpenAir Business Intelligence connector. So if you have the BI connector tool or with your OpenAir instance, you then can use the NSOA.report to access that within your scripts. And then finally, there's the well, actually not finally, this is the NSOA.ws API. These are the commands used to manipulate the data that is in the OpenAir database. This consists of such items as the read, the add, the modify functions, the upsert functions within OpenAir. This allows you to actually pull data from the database add data, modify data, all those items here. This is kind of your main bread and butter of doing any sort of data manipulations. And finally, the NSOA.https. Now this allows you to connect to other applications via web service methods. So connecting to things like Salesforce, QuickBooks, and the like, you can do it right through script using these NSOA HTTPS. Okay, so a form script example. Okay, here we have a form script which identifies a negative value which has been entered on any individual timesheet cell and throws an error if found. So what you see over here on your left is a list of the different form scripts that you can create scripts on. This one was created on the time entry form, okay? And as you can see here, the function goes through and we've identified the function as identify negative values. Very simple script. And what we'll do is we'll see, you can see here, we're getting the form value of total from the get value. We're using the meta library to trace that out and basically write a log entry of what that total is. Okay. So then we take a look at that total and we say if it's less than 0, we're going to throw a form error. And we can see here on the total function, and we have what our wording is. Value must be positive. So this is a quick example of what you can do with a form script. Now, one thing to note is not all form scripts are listed or can, no, I'm sorry, not all not all of the UI forms are listed. Okay, the majority of them are, but not all of them are. Some items you can't run scripts off of. Okay, scheduled script examples. Okay, so some of the scheduled scripts that we've built, and this will kind of show you of what you can do, different examples of what you can do with these scheduled scripts. So for instance, we had one which sums the total of planned or booked hours on all tasks for a project and moving that total to the budget hours field on the project. So now somebody doesn't have to go separately and add them up. And the script will run through on a scheduled and find all those planned or booked hours and change the budget hours field. Another one that we wrote was a splitting of fixed fee revenue transactions to the users that work towards that revenue, distributing proportionality by hours worked. So this script went through, and as users entered their time on a project, it created a revenue recognition transaction for that user, and actually based on the revenue on the project, or it distributed proportionally by the hours worked. And then we had another one, was copying a field on the project properties to every charge associated with that project. So sometimes within OpenAir, it doesn't do things that you want it to do. And this is a way of allowing you to do that by taking a field on the project property and adding it onto the project. All right. One of the things we did with the integrations was we integrated with QuickBooks to create sales receipts from invoices. Another integration we did was with Jira integration to create time entries in OpenAir from time entered on Jira tasks. So again, some of the examples of all the different things that you do. Okay, so I mentioned this a little bit before, and one thing that we need to keep aware of when we are doing OpenAir scripting is there are some governors placed on the scripting so that we don't run off and use all the processing power that OpenAir has in place. So OpenAir places limitations on the number of transactions, the time, and the number of emails that a script can execute. Each command takes a certain number of units. Okay. For an example, when you're reading a value from a form, it's 1 unit. When writing an error message to the log, that's 4 units. Reading values from the database, 20 units for the original call, and 10 units for each record read. So to note, these governors limitations are completely independent and unrelated to OpenAir's API governance limits or their BI governance limits. Okay, so as the October of 2019 release, and I don't believe these have changed since then, the form scripts have a 5-second runtime. They have a 1,000 unit limit and a 3 email subject to the first line passed and a 1,000 character max on the emails. The scheduled scripts have a 1 hour runtime. They have a 1 million unit governance and 100 emails. Again, subject is the first line passed at the 1,000 character max. Okay, so some of the best practices that we find for scripting is first, I'll use the references at your disposal. And here we have a list of them. Okay, you can download the NetSuite OpenAir User Scripting Guide, and that'll give you a very good introduction into scripting. If you look at the OpenAir Data Dictionary, again, that's a nice place that lists all of the different objects and objects tables and all of the fields associated with those. And then a good JavaScript reference site is w3schools.com. And again, that will give you a very good understanding of JavaScript commands. Also on the W3 Schools, you can actually do a little bit of coding in there and test your JavaScript functions. And then the SOAP Explorer and the Functions Explorer in the Scripting Center. Again, as I said earlier, those two are very nice fields that give you examples and show you all the tables and the fields associated with those. So more best practices here are the scripting logs. The development environment that you're seeing within OpenAir doesn't allow you to do any sort of debugging or within that thing. So really it runs, and in order to really understand what your scripting is doing, you should really use the logging function and use it liberally. So, some of the things that we do is log the number of records read when using the read function. This will kind of tell you, again, within your read function, if it's filtering the way you expect it to do by reading what you're getting returned. Evaluate the results of any WSAPI add or WSAPI modify statement and rate the success or failure and the error codes to the log. So again, another log function there that if you're adding something or modifying something, you can check whether or not it actually succeeded or failed. And again, the only way to do that is through the log functions. And then again, keep track of your governance limits by logging the value of the context, remaining units, and the remaining time functions. Okay, take advantage of the 6 levels of script logging provided in the Scripting Center. If you take a look within the OpenAir scripts, you can set the log levels as the script runs. So when you create a log function within OpenAir, you can give it these different attributes and these different levels. They go from fatal, error, warning, info, debug, and trace. So fatal is meant when system identifies fatal errors. Error, when your code identifies a fatal error. Warning, items that are used that the user should review. Info, status, such as the number of entities found meeting the script criteria. This is the default logging level for deployed scripts. Debug, this info is helpful in finding errors in the code or data. And trace, detailed logging designed to step through a code, a line, or set of lines at a time. So again, each one of these levels, OpenAir will output the level or the log function based on what the script level is set to. When you're in test mode, though, it will output all the logging that you do. So if you have something running in test, you can now. Actually, one thing I did want to say about this is OpenAir does have a limit of 1,000 log entries for any one-time run. So if you do too much tracing or debugging, OpenAir will actually end at some point if your script runs off and is doing way too much output here. Okay, so in summary, OpenAir scripting can introduce logic specific to your business process needs, increase your data accuracy, communicate via email whenever that occurs, Provide integration capability between OpenAir and other systems. Carefully design a solution is required to meet the government's limits. And then follow the best practice and connect with fellow OpenAir's users to share your experience and ideas. Okay, if you want to know more, so we at TopStep, we're a leading provider of OpenAir solutions for your professional service functions. We've served over 500 clients. We have deep expertise in PS business operations, services designed to empower your organization. So you can stay informed, you can visit our website, you can follow our tweets at TopStep Tweets, or you can join in the LinkedIn group OpenAir Users if you wish. So again, thank you very much, everyone here, and good luck with all your scripting.